So, Meghna, it's been a very interesting journey from financial journalism to writing fiction, non-fiction columns, all that you write. So, how did that happen? Very briefly,
Right.
and what was the moment that you decided that you want to give it all up to be a writer?
So, I think I always tell people that life is like a cross stitch. When you're in it, it seems very chaotic, very messy. But when you look back, there's a pattern that emerges. And for me, I never set out to be a writer. Like all 90s kids growing up, I was told you can either be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. Otherwise, you're intellectually incapacitated. And I decided to become a doctor. My parents actually talked me out of it. I'd gone into medical college and they said, no, you'll be studying till 30, so pursue something else. So then I went on to study economics, did my MBA because I thought my brother is not going to be working. He always wanted to be in the creative field. And I said, isme to paisa hai nahi. So I said, one sibling should at least make some money. So I did my MBA, I got a scholarship. Then I got a job in corporate finance in Switzerland. So I was working there. And that's when this kida of, I'm not cut out for the corporate life. That's when I really understood it in my mid 20s. And I moved back to Mumbai and I became an anchor, news anchor by sheer coincidence. I was at an event and some camera person asked me for a piece to camera. And Ornab Goswami saw it and they called me in for an audition for Times Now. So that's how I became an accidental journalist. And from there, I moved to New York. I was working there for Bloomberg UTV. And while working, because my job would get done at 4 o'clock, I started attending writing courses. So Kida was there, but I never had the sort of bandwidth to pursue writing. But those 3 years, I would attend all kinds of writing courses and really honed in on my skills. And I was going through an abusive marriage, so it was kind of my therapy also. So it became something I got deeply invested in. And I didn't think I'd make a career out of it at that point. But then in 2012, I got published. One and a Half Wife came out. It got picked up in 2 hours by Westland. And then the next year, Random House approached me and said, we loved One and a Half Wife. Do you have something else? And I had a collection of short stories, Happy Birthday. And I said, yeah, if publishers are approaching me, that means I must have some sort of voice. I must believe in my own talent. So I took a chance on myself and left a very lucrative job, NRI job, and moved to Mumbai in 2013 and became a full-time writer. And I've been so since then.
How many books has it been since?
9 books, 10th coming out very shortly. So 9 published books.
Lovely, wonderful.
Lots others in the drafts and the folders.
You've been a writer who's dabbled across fiction and non-fiction, and most people think that's a little difficult, because they're different skill sets altogether. Have you ever felt that?
Actually, Kiran, I've written both non-fiction and fiction. I've written How to Get Published in India, Feminist Rani. And I feel like having a journalistic base has actually really helped me in certain skills. First is the ability to write with brevity. So that's why you see my short stories. I consider myself still a short story writer. I started my career with that. The ability to also work against deadlines. So I write a lot of columns for different publications around India, and I've never missed a deadline. And more importantly, the ability, I have 2 young kids, and I've been working through it and writing and publishing through it because I've learned how to thrive in chaos. And that's something that being a journalist, being in a newsroom, you're surrounded by so much upheaval, and you somehow find that calm within the chaos. And I think that's really helped me be productive even during these, this early motherhood phase. So I actually thank my journalistic background for giving me a lot of skills that I don't think I would have possessed if I'd only been, a fiction writer. So I think those skills came in handy.
A lot of us writers tend to mine our own lives, and your first book was definitely took off from bits of your own life, and also the other one, which came out.
Boys Don't Cry.
Yeah, the ones before this one. After a point, you write about your life, but then you grow out of it. At any point, do you feel that maybe I shouldn't be writing about it? Maybe I should not. Maybe I need to distance myself from my life now and not put this out?
I'm so glad you asked that question because, like I said earlier, writing is therapeutic for me. So it was never about, so I'll give you an example. In 2015, I wrote an article for Femina about surviving, domestic violence. And the floodgates of hell almost opened up. Kiran, women from around India, from the hinterlands, from big metropolis, they all emailed me, messaged me, reached out to me saying that they'd never been allowed to talk. And we assume a wide distance, I think, society between women's, what we call private issues, and what comes out in the public domain. So it was never about shaming the perpetrator. I've never even taken his name in public. It was more about creating awareness that if you find yourself in certain, and tragedy hits us all in some way or the other, and it comes in different forms for each and every one of us. How do you cope with it? How do you survive? And not just survive, how do you thrive? And learn to move on, because I know a lot of women who've faced similar situations and never been able to come out of it. Their entire life has been defined by that. How do you seek the light at the end of the tunnel? So it was more of a inspirational story, more a story of hope and redemption and finding yourself and forgiving yourself. So there were there's a lot of lessons in there, more for other women especially to learn from. And I hope I feel like it's resonated with a lot of people and helped them. So I hope that message carries forward.
Lovely. You've also, I've read your work, a lot of it. I've halfway through your most recent book, I must confess, not completed it yet.
That's a slightly experimental book, The Man
yeah.
Who Lost India.
Very interesting one. What I find interesting is that you have gone from very emotional books to something funny, to fiction, which is very tongue-in-cheek at times, to this latest book, which is very experimental. So how do you decide what you're going to take up next?
I love that question again, Kiran, because I call myself an equal opportunity confuser. The publishers have no idea what genre to put me in, right? Because I'm not writing just mythology or
I
just
hear you,
romance.
babe.
They're like, "ये अभी क्या लिखने वाली है?" So I don't restrain myself to any particular genre. For me, no, Kiran, the story should be told in the best possible way, and that is my goal. So I don't care about these categorizations, right? Because I feel like as artists especially, why should we abide by the boxes that society has created for us? The whole point of being an artist is to push the envelope, is to unlearn what we've been taught so deeply that sometimes on a subliminal level, we're not even aware of it. So let's break out of these stereotypes and boxes that if you're a woman, you can only write about, household dramas. Who says women can't write war novels? And I wrote The Man Who Lost India to prove a man wrong, because he said women can't write war novels. And I said, oh, here you go. And the entire thing is that if a story comes to you, don't start holding yourself back saying, ki, acha, this is not going to suit my genre. Write the story to the best of your ability and leave it to its own journey then. And don't define yourselves by what publishers want or the public want. You tell the story that needs to be told, the story that comes to you the most. So for me, that's the reason I've written comedy, I've written drama, I've written thrillers, and now I've written a war novel, I've written non-fiction. So because I don't constrain myself as an artist, I'm like, the world is your canvas, paint it large.
So are you a plotter or a panster?
Plotter for sure.
Okay.
Which is very surprising. So the genesis of my story is unbridled in many ways, but its execution is very thought out. And that's just the kind of person I am in real life. I'm very meticulous, very organized. So for 1.5 my first novel, for example, I knew my beginning and end. I didn't know my middle. And halfway through writing that novel, I completely got stuck. I didn't know where to go with the protagonist, Amara. So that's when, and now what I do is I always write a synopsis, a brief synopsis of the beginning, middle, and end. But here's the thing, when you start writing, your characters take on a life of their own. And they surprise you. And the minute I know that the character is surprising me and the plot twist that I expected has taken on a different hue, that's when I know it's a good story. So I let myself be surprised even within that organized frame.
What's your process like?
Insane amount of hard work. Like, people keep asking me this, how are you being so productive? And I'm like, I wish there was a secret. When people ask someone, how have you lost so much weight? And there's a secret like liposuction or Ozempic. None of that here. It's plain old hard work. You want to say something?
The Ozempic question, when it gets thrown at you and you've been slaving at the gym for so many months and you're like, Hello, it's hard work.
I did that to you also, didn't I? Sorry. But yeah, you're right. It's actually plain old hard work. I think we've also grown up like that, being told that there are no shortcuts in life, there are no secrets. It's plain old hard work. I am working from 6 a.m. when I get up to 10:30 in the night, non-stop. Every hour of mine is unforgiving that way because I'm either doing housework, doing my actual writing work, thinking of stories, thinking of my characters, thinking of my columns. Even when I'm physically looking after my children, my mind is on the character, on the story, on how to get it out there. So it's a very interesting process. And I think, Kiran, you'll also find this with experience and time. For example, an article would earlier take me a week to write. Now I can write an article in a day. So I think that your productivity really increases because you know your own voice. You trust your own voice. So you become better and better at your writing process with experience and with hard work. So I think the payoff has come in now after a decade of writing.
Okay. You're at your desk from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. But of course, in between, there's stuff that needs to be done. You have two small kids.
Life, yes.
You have a home to be run. You have all that to be done. So when you're in the middle of writing your first draft, do you need that uninterrupted time to get that done? Or can you write in chaos? Because, you've been a journalist, I've been a journalist, we thrive on chaos.
Right.
The world can go to pot around us, but we'll get our stories out. But for that first draft, I feel that you need
Yes.
that isolation, but which we don't often get. So how do you do that?
The first draft is that's again a great question because whenever I'm writing my first draft, my husband can see it on my face. He claims so he just avoids me. It's like
Sensible man. He takes it.
like you're like a poltergeist. You're like I mean, I'm physically there, but mentally I'm completely somewhere else. So that first draft, how I thrive it, how I plow through it in the chaos is just by my mind is somewhere else. So everything else is then on autopilot or automated. And I miss a lot of things. So what I do is, for example, when I was writing my first book, or my first few books, I didn't watch TV for 5 years. But I can't do that anymore. So what I do instead is wake up really early in the morning or stay up really late in the night or cut out on my social commitments. So cut out on wherever I can cull out time. I give it that best shot. So the first draft is the most important. But I also get out of my own way because if a story has to be told and it has to be told in a certain time frame, then I'll find time. So I'll create that time. And I think it comes from being very organized and also being very, almost like a Nazi with my time. Like I just don't waste it on things that are not important. So I have a very high priority list on what's important for me. And I work from that departure point.
I'm so glad you said that. I think with the time writers, we need to be like dragons guarding our gold.
Yes, absolutely.
And most people don't get that. They think you're being antisocial and you're being too hoity-toity and you
Yes.
don't want to come and meet. But the point is time is limited and time is precious. And plus you have small kids, which takes up an ample amount of time. Now, given that you're writing your fiction, your books, you're writing your columns, so
Right.
do you sort of schedule out your day beforehand that this is my writing time, this is the time I'm going to give to write my column, this is the time I'm going to do my television, whatever. Does it happen that way or you just sort of go with the flow?
So earlier, I used to set myself a limit of 500 words a day, which is a classic, the classic writer's schedule. But now there are days when I can go 5,000 words in a day. There are days when I will not write at all. So I've given myself that leeway. And Kiran, the one thing I've realized is that if you are going to be a sort of a writer with a family life going on, you have to, the biggest thing, especially as a female writer, as a woman writer, is to be kind to yourself. That allow yourself, like for example, I treat myself every day with something. When I know I'm working so hard, I'll give myself 1 hour of me time. I'll just watch trashy TV, or I have Modern Family on. I have my Friends, I have my Seinfeld, I have my typical, comfort TV, as I call it, playing in the background. Or I'll give myself sweet treats, that on a job well done. So I also have learned the art of rewarding myself, and not in the public eye, but in the private moments, because I think that's where we need to throw ourselves into sharp relief, because I think as writers, as productive writers, we are so hard on ourselves. So I'm teaching myself a new life skill. So I'm allowing myself that room to make mistakes. And it's okay. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that's that superwoman complex that we all suffer from, right?
We're
Yeah,
just
they're-
super women. Forget the super women.
So we all want to look like Deepika Padukone. We want to earn like Indira Nui. We want to be as nurturing as Nirupa Roy. It's not going to happen. We can't abide by all those things. These are so just be the best version of you. Allow yourself to fall and fail, because even the moon does not have to be whole in order to shine. We're not meant to be perfect human beings in order to be productive, in order to be loved, in order to lead normal lives. And I think that's the one thing that as I'm getting older, I've stopped this notion of being the superwoman or being perfect in every aspect of my life. I just let myself fall and fail and enjoy it. Revel in the success as much as the failure.
Lovely. You've written a book on how to get published. For those who are listening in and watching, what would be your 5 main tips that you would say they need to keep in mind if they're looking to get published?
The first thing I would say is remember that writing is not a democratic process, it's an autocratic process. Which means that when, we're talking about the first draft right now, when you're getting that story out of the way, the first draft out of the way, first thing you must do is get out of your own way. That means do not be critical of yourself at this point. Trust in your voice, trust in your story, trust in your instinct that you're telling the story to the best of your ability, and don't be too harsh and critical of yourself during that stage. So listen to your own voice. Once that first draft is out, that's where your ego then as an artist must go away. And from the second draft to the final draft, that kill your darlings phase has to start. Then you start editing, and then you're ruthless with yourself. So in the first draft, be very kind to yourself. And from that departure point, be very unkind to yourself. And for me, that's what works. The second thing I would advise is take the ego away from the artist, which is once your first draft is out there, you have to learn how to edit, because writing is basically rewriting. So at that point, show your draft, read it to other people, read it aloud if you must, do whatever works for you. So the editing process is very important because nowadays, as you know, I've written this in How to Get Published also. Kiran, editors are inundated with manuscripts. They get, I think, a new submission in their inbox every 5 minutes. How will your submission stand out? How will it not end up in that rejection pile where, the rejection rates, by the way, in India are 95%, which is why we see such a high rate of self-publishing. If you want a traditional publisher and if you want to be published well, then make sure the third thing is to understand the publishing process. Because trust me, Kiran, people like you and me, we taught this process to ourselves, right? We went through the rigmarole. We had no mentors. We had no one holding our hand. We taught the process to ourselves and we failed. We made so many mistakes. I feel like I made so many mistakes early on in my career. I think I still do, but some of that struggle I want other aspiring writers not to have, which is why I wrote this book. So understand the submission process, the query letter. For example, I remember talking to Chiki, and Chiki said, Meghna, people of Juggernaut, people would send her emails starting with, Dear Mr. Sarkar. I mean, basic mistakes. Do your research before approaching publishers. They don't have the time. So focus on your query letter. Make sure this is my fourth piece of advice. Make sure your first sentence, your first paragraph, your first page of whatever you're submitting catches the eye of the publisher. Make it riveting. Focus a lot of attention on it. So your opening has to be spectacular. And the fifth piece of advice I would say is getting published in India now is not very difficult anymore because, the lowest common denominator with the 9,000 publishers now. So, I mean, I saw this very funny thing where somebody basically uploaded a photo of their shoe and put it up on KDP, right? On
Yes.
Kindle
And it's
self-published. And it's sold.
It's sold.
And he said, I'm an author. And all he did was put up a photo of his shoe as a cover of the so-called book. It was an empty book. So it's so easy to get self-published, but the fact is a self-published author will maybe sell 50 copies unless they're very lucky. So we have, of course, seen success stories of self-published authors like Amish, like Ashwin, like Savi Sharma, but they're far and few in between. So if you're looking to get the traditional publishing route, to get invited to literature festivals, to have a good, thriving career as an author, get your fundamentals in order. So know how to sell, build a community. Please don't approach authors with, that entitled. Do you get that a lot in your inbox? I get an email every single day by somebody I don't know, have never heard of, has never approached me, saying my book is coming out, go and promote it.
These are the links. Please buy and put up a review on this on
Yes, put up a
Amazon.
review.
On Amazon, Kindle, Goodreads. भाई मैं तेरी नौकर बैठी हूँ यहाँ पे, आई एम सॉरी बट
Exactly. No, hi, I've read your books. I'm a fan of you. None of that. Just
so I mean I do feel bad for them at times
Of
because
course, yeah.
nobody has given them sane advice like you've given them to, you know, be a little more courteous and say that maybe I'd like you to read my book if you had the time, and I'd be
Yes.
happy to hear what you think of it, which is the polite way to go about it, and not put up a review on Amazon and Goodreads. Which brings me to the other point, which is not connected with creativity per se, but the fact that now authors have also to be social marketers
yes,
and promoters and PR agents and all of that.
right.
How do you deal with it? Because I've given up, very honestly.
But you're so good on social media. In
No,
fact, you are my, remember before I met you, I was such a fangirl.
Yeah.
I still am, but
That was
your
back in
social
the
media
day
was-
when I was new and enthusiastic, but now I've sort of given up on it.
But Kiran, the problem is there's no choice now, right? You have to be active on social media because jo dikta hai, wo bikta hai. And let no one tell you otherwise. Even now as established authors, if our last book does not sell well, the publishers will be reluctant to publish our new book or advances will lower. So we have to prove ourselves with every book in terms of not just the content, but also the sales numbers. And the fact is, Kiran, that only 2% of published books make it into bookstores to begin with, because nowadays bookstores are all about the merchandise, because they also have, it's a business, right, at the end of the day, and it's so pitiful that they have to do it. But they're selling coffee, they're selling merchandise because books are not flying off the shelves like they used to. So understand that, what is it, some startling number where only 1% of books that come out in India manage to sell more than 10,000 copies, Kiran. And a bestseller is called a book that has sold 10,000 copies, that's it. In a population of what, 1.3, 1.4 billion people.
And we are competing with books for competitive exam entrances.
Yes, educational
educational texts. Those are the bestsellers, actual bestsellers.
Those are the bestsellers. So 90% of books sell less than 2,000 copies in their lifetime, Kiran. So just imagine, I mean, I think we belong to that category of, that 4% who managed to sell between 2,000 to 10,000 copies, which is why we're still in the industry, which is why we're still getting published. But imagine the task that we have to put up just to be able to sell even that much. So unfortunately, if you want to make a career out of being a writer, first of all, understand nobody gets famous or rich by being an author, not a book author.
Don't give up your day job, anybody.
Nobody give up your day job. Understand that with the advances and the royalties, you cannot pay your bills. You have to hustle. You have to have either a side career going on, or you have to have come into a large fortune through marriage or inheritance, whatever works for you, or you continue your day job. But you cannot make money as a book writer. So please, I think these harsh realities are some things that people are not aware of. And I think they get very shocked when they hear this, or even when they read how to get published, because there's nobody else saying these things to them.
Wait, I'm glad you brought that up, that, have a side gig. Don't give up your day job. The advances and royalties are not going to pay your grocery bills.
I think Priyanka Chopra's dog would be more famous than a writer. So
yeah.
please be aware that you're not going to get fame out of this.
Definitely not. You just might get some feel-good glorification when you go for Lit Fest, but that's about it.
That's where we're the rock stars. You
yeah.
enter and everybody knows your name.
Yeah, then we come back home and you're back to the same old day. Anyway, that's another thing altogether, another discussion for another day. We spoke about you shifting into screenwriting.
Right.
And that's a different skill altogether. You also spoke about the fact that you are co-writing with somebody because you need that visual sense.
Right.
Now, how does that visual sense come about? How do you create or develop that visual sense?
I think all writers are by their very nature visual creatures. Even when I'm writing for my books, for example, I'm imagining the scene before I put it to pen. But what happens with the writing for screenplays, it's very interesting, Kiran, which is a skill that we as authors need to develop if we want to enter into screenplay writing. You have the talent, you have the discipline to finish telling this complete story from start to end. You have the ability and the talent to develop characters, develop plot lines. All that talent and skill is there. So you're already on a win. Where I think book writers lose out are two places. One is the contracts. We don't know how to negotiate contracts. So having an agent really helps in that case. I have a lawyer husband, so that helps me. So that is an aspect I think a lot of people get intimidated. Second is the process, because here, see, in publishing, it's the editor and you, and that's the gatekeeper. The editor is the gatekeeper. In films, there are 100 gatekeepers
Yes.
whom you have to keep very happy. So it's a different skill set again to be able to deal with so many people suddenly. You know, from dealing with only one editor who's read your book and then has brought it out to the world, you have 20 people giving you feedback on your work. So your ego has to completely be away from the writing. So remove, again, get out of your own way. I think that really helps. And the third thing is a collaborative process. You know, as authors, we're so used to writing in isolation. We write our story, we send it to the publisher, they accept it or reject it, then we send it to another publisher. However, it works. But it's only you and the reader. It's going almost directly to the reader. Here, you've got to work with at least 20, 30 other people who are going to give you feedback on your writing. So you're going to have to learn to keep your ego away, to keep yourself away, and understand that in the end, the story needs to flourish. And I think Bollywood needs that. It needs beautiful stories to be told, which I think the content is a bit lacking, honestly, in my opinion. And I think if storytellers push themselves and come up with these beautiful stories and are willing to work in collaboration, we can have such beautiful films come out of India. So for me, the end goal is that I hope we get better content, because we look at us, look at our history. We are a land of so many stories, and I wish for all of them to be told in a beautiful way.
Lovely. You've done something very experimental with your latest book.
Yes.
You've written a war novel, and it is not the straightforward war novel at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. So what made you pick this up? I mean, it
Yeah.
was a big risk.
Big risk. It's the first dystopic war novel that has been written by a woman in India. My editor had informed me. And also the first book about India and China going to war in the future. So Kiran, this book came about because a man told me that women cannot write war novels. And I said, being the heretic that I am, I have to debunk any stereotype, right? I think that's my only goal in life, that if somebody says women can't do something, I'll go out to prove that they can. Even my productivity during early motherhood has come because somebody told me that you'll be out of commission for 5 years after becoming a new mother. And I said, ab main dikhati hu. So don't tell women what they can and cannot do. So the departure point was that I, of course, once I finished writing the novel, I got consumed by this canonical fear that it's not the perfect war novel. Because see, war novels have traditionally had a very masculine voice, right? They're all about heroism and masculinity and the actual physical act of war. And here I'm exploring the psychological impact, the deciduous sort of impact of war, where religion and faith play a primary role. So it was very experimental. I knew I was taking a big risk, but again, like I said earlier, I'm done with this notion of perfection. No book is going to be perfect. No story is going to be perfect. No author is going to be perfect. Our lives are not meant to be perfect, right? We are all fundamentally flawed human beings, falling and failing every day, because that is the lived human experience. And we need to embrace ourselves and embrace our lives and embrace our work and all of that. So if somebody else could have written it better, great. But I did the best I could. So I made it, I keep telling people it's like Kattal Biryani, the man who lost India. You either love it or you hate it. Like Boys Don't Cry, my last novel, is like, normal Rajma Chawal. Everybody who's read it has loved the book. But this one was very experimental. And see, I'm here to learn and to grow. So I said, I have to take a chance on this. I have to say that women can write war novels. And whether I fail doing it or whether I thrive doing it, it doesn't matter. Like the Gita says, worry about the action, not the consequences of those actions. So the point of art is Brahmananda Sahodara, which is to uplift yourself, to come into a higher being. So for me, that's the reason I write, so that I can evolve and grow in this lifetime.
What's coming next?
Next is a children's book,
Okay.
which I'm really looking forward to. Completely the opposite process from writing a very heavy war novel. Sweet, it's light, it's fun, and I'm looking forward to. My daughters are featured in it, so they'll be thrilled with it.
How lovely.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. I'm writing 2 thrillers right now, which I'm very excited about. I love thrillers. So I think I've got all the darkness and all the naughtiness to be able to write a thriller. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Lovely. All the very best, Meghna, for all that you do.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much for
Kiran.
this conversation, and looking forward to reading the next ones.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.